Well, hello there, goblins and ghouls. So, I like to occasionally, look at some newer bands here and there, or singer songwriters that are not from the 80s or 90s. And this time I'm going to look at Algiers, which is a surprisingly intense industrial soul group, which is a unique combination. And I was surprised that it worked as well as it does and in as unique of a way that it does. There are two things that you normally wouldn't associate with each other. And, I'm not going to particularly go in deep in talking about this band. I just want to say that they started in 2012 and they're still going. So, again, they're a relatively new group. If a group's been around for 10 years, it means they're not ancient, right? And they consist of multi instrumentalists too, so that's quite often a good thing. You've got Franklin James Fisher, Ryan Mahan, Lee Tesh, I think that's how that's pronounced, and you've got Matt Tong, among some others who are making appearances on their albums. I guess you might call them guest artists or whatever. But they're a band that's been around. They have some success, and Algiers even undertook a European stadium tour that found them opening up for Depeche Mode and remixing the lead single from Depeche Mode's Spirit album. So basically, if you're a Depeche Mode and you're keeping up to date with that band, then there's already a chance you've heard Algiers if you didn't hear them elsewhere. I think I heard them on Amazon Music on some artist based radio station. I was like, oh, this is actually interesting. It's catching my ear. It's keeping my attention to some degree, and sure enough, it's good. I've listened to a full album and some other songs by them, and it's a decent effort. Very unique, like I said, and it's something that could uh, perhaps grow on somebody even if they're not really that much into it at first. There's enough of a uniqueness to it that it could, I would say, eventually win some people over, even if they've been kind of taken aback. Those are really some of my favorite kinds of bands, actually, when they kind of have to grow on you over time. Like when I first heard the Dead Kennedys, for example, like a lot of people, I was like, "What is this? This is so weird. This is unusual." But they really became one of my favorite bands when I was in high school, and I still listen to them today. Jello Biafra's, really a creative force, highly influential. And I have a feeling that Algiers is, going to stick around and go places, to the extent that it's possible nowadays. I think you've got a lot of corporate pressures to not stay independent. Like if you want to get attention focused upon you, but I think with a band like this, maybe they'll be able to stay fresh and keep people engaged. It's really tough to say. But their second album, their The Underside of Power, that's what I listened to, and that was released on August 23rd, 2017. Maybe I'll talk a little bit more about that album. And from what I gather, the band's lyrical content explores things like, some of the same themes that Radiohead might cover, but they also talk about things like slavery, fascism, capital punishment, civil rights struggles, and themes which are particularly timely in the current political climate. The band's albums have been positively received by music critics, with calling them one of their bands to watch. I don't really read Stereo Gum or anything like that, but that's something I saw about the band, that they were included on such a list, and I can see why. Their average song seems like a rollicking, incisive indictment of the current political climate, and I'm sure there's some personal themes in their lyrics too. I can't say I was really paying that much attention to the lyrics. I was not laser focused on those, but from what I gathered, they have, some messaging like that. In fact, the very name Algiers is sort of a political thing, really, from what I understand. And musically, I would say they sound almost like a male Mavis Staples ish soul singer with sort of a warrior component. And you add that in to a post punk, experimental rock, hip hop, and industrial blender, and you hit the button, and you might get something like Algiers. So, like, if I was going to have any complaint about this band, it would be that I don't know, some of their songs kind of blend together a little too much. Like, that's that's what I would say about them. That's not really a it's not as negative of a complaint as you might think. But like, if you're listening to one of their albums, you might not necessarily be able to tell one track from the next, and that can be a negative thing. Whereas, like, if I'm listening to some bands, like, I can instantly tell the songs apart, I would say. But it's kind of one of the problems with modern music, I think. And unfortunately, this band kind of has a little bit of that problem. But at the same time, it's it's also the case that I wasn't really hyper focused on what sets one song apart from the next. It's like I suggested before. If you pay attention to an album, you're a little bit more likely to be more connected to it. So in this case, I need to let this band grow on me a little bit more. I will surely be listening to more of their stuff here and there. And, you know, obviously, if you're a super fan of this band, you might be pissed off by my little critique there, but I think it's a fair thing to say. It's like some punk bands. You listen to some old punk albums. Some of their songs can blend together, like the Ramones, for example. Obviously considered a classic band, but if you listen to like 30 Ramones songs in a row, you might have a bit of a challenge telling them apart. So this isn't really so much a just a critique of modern music, because you could say the same thing about a lot of different genres and time periods, but it seems like in some cases it's pervasive with with the modern era. So anyway, that's really all I have to say about Algiers. I do recommend them, and it's it's a good listen. Go ahead and check them out.